Have you ever wondered why some individuals, despite their undeniable inner strength and profound capacity for love, consistently find themselves trapped in patterns of relational suffering? They wear a mask, carefully constructed and meticulously maintained, believing it to be their shield, their armor against the slings and arrows of romantic entanglement. This isn't the playful disguise of a masquerade, but a psychological edifice, a persona forged in the crucible of past wounds and societal expectations, designed to navigate the treacherous waters of intimacy while keeping their authentic self hidden beneath layers of carefully curated performance. It's the mask they wear to survive love, not to truly experience it. Consider Elara, a woman whose luminous eyes held the quiet wisdom of ancient forests, yet whose heart beat to the rhythm of perpetual apprehension. From the outside, she was a paragon of composure, a woman of sharp intellect and gentle humor, always ready with a comforting word or a pragmatic solution. Men were drawn to her like moths to a flame, mesmerized by her apparent strength and unwavering self-possession. Yet, beneath this captivating veneer, lay a profound fear of vulnerability, a deep-seated terror of being seen for who she truly was, flaws and all. Her childhood had been a landscape of subtle neglect, where affection was conditional and vulnerability was met with dismissal. She learned early that to be loved, she had to be perfect or at least flawlessly competent and emotionally contained. This lesson solidified into a core belief, manifesting as a rigid persona that she presented to the world, especially in the realm of romantic relationships. She adopted the role of the caregiver, the unshakable support system, the one who never needed anything in return. This wasn't a conscious deception. It was a deeply ingrained coping mechanism, a survival strategy. When Elara met Liam, a whirlwind of genuine warmth and unvarnished emotion, a different kind of challenge emerged. Liam saw past the facade, or at least he tried to. He was captivated by her intellect and wit, but he also sensed a hidden wellspring of emotion she guarded fiercely. Their initial courtship was a dance of approach and retreat. Elara, accustomed to men who admired her projected strength, found Liam's attempts to delve beneath the surface unsettling. He would ask about her feelings, her dreams, her fears, questions that, to her, felt like invasive probes into the very core of her guarded self. She would deflect, offer logical explanations for her emotional states, or retreat into a quiet stillness that spoke volumes. The more Liam sought authentic connection, the more Elara tightened her grip on her persona, becoming even more composed, even more outwardly self-sufficient. She believed, deep down, that if Liam ever saw the trembling, uncertain girl within, he would recoil. This was her shadow, the parts of herself she deemed unacceptable, the messy, vulnerable aspects she had meticulously hidden away. One evening, after a particularly trying day for Elara at work, Liam found her in their quiet living room, staring blankly at a book she wasn't reading. He sat beside her, gently taking her hand. "Elara," he began, his voice soft. "You seem distant tonight. Is everything all right?" Her immediate response was a practiced smile, a slight shrug. "Just a long day, darling. Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix." But Liam didn't let it go. "I worry about you sometimes, Elara. Feels like you carry so much on your own. You don't have to, I'm here." His words, meant to be comforting, struck a raw nerve. The mask, for a fleeting moment, faltered. A tremor ran through her hand, and her eyes, for the first time in his presence, held a hint of unshed tears. This was a moment of acute emotional distress, a tiny crack in her carefully constructed facade. But instead of letting the dam break, Elara pulled away, physically and emotionally. "I'm fine, Liam. Really. Please, let's not make a big deal out of nothing." She then stood, excusing herself to make tea, effectively ending the conversation and rebuilding her defenses. Liam, bewildered and hurt, watched her retreat. He loved her deeply, but he felt perpetually shut out, unable to truly reach the woman he knew was hidden beneath the polished exterior. The pain point here is the inability to experience genuine intimacy due to the rigid adherence to a protective persona. Elara's fear of vulnerability, born from early relational patterns, created a self-fulfilling prophecy. By guarding herself so fiercely, she inadvertently pushed away the very connection she craved. Her actions were not malicious, but a desperate attempt to survive love without risking the profound hurt she associated with authentic connection. This is a classic example of what Carl Jung termed the persona, the public face we present to the world, often for the purpose of adaptation to society. While necessary for social interaction, when it becomes too rigid or too far removed from the true self, it creates a chasm between our inner world and our outer expression, leading to emotional isolation even within intimate relationships. It is in this disconnect that love struggles to breathe. Elara's journey, and indeed the journey of anyone trapped within the confines of a rigid persona, is a profound and often solitary one. She embodies the archetype of the wounded healer in reverse, a person so adept at caring for others, so seemingly self-sufficient, that they become profoundly disconnected from their own needs and vulnerabilities. The theme woven through her story is the tragic irony of seeking connection through detachment, of building walls to protect a heart that desperately longs for genuine embrace. When you find yourself in a similar position, perpetually presenting a polished, impenetrable self to the world, ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of? What hidden parts of myself do I believe are unacceptable to those I wish to love? The answers lie not in tearing down the entire edifice of your persona, for it serves a purpose in the world, but in softening its edges, in allowing small, controlled breaches for authenticity to emerge. Dare to show a flicker of your true self, a moment of unvarnished emotion, to those who have earned your trust. The path to true intimacy lies not in perfection, but in the courageous unveiling of your authentic, wonderfully imperfect self. The story of Elara, and countless others like her, shines a spotlight on a profound psychological truth. The mask we wear to survive love often becomes the very barrier preventing us from truly experiencing it. This leads us to the heart of another crucial aspect of navigating relationships: the often unconscious projections we cast onto others, mistaking our inner landscape for their true nature. Consider the insightful words of Carl Jung. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This powerful statement offers a profound lens through which to examine the intricate dance of romantic relationships, particularly when one partner is operating from behind a carefully constructed persona. For Elara, the meticulous projection of competence and self-sufficiency served as a defensive mechanism, but it also became a filter through which she perceived Liam. She projected her own deep-seated fear of inadequacy onto his desires for connection, interpreting his gentle probes for vulnerability as signs that he would eventually find her wanting. Imagine Elara and Liam's dynamic through this Jungian principle. Liam, in his genuine openness, inadvertently triggered Elara's shadow, those unacknowledged aspects of herself, her insecurity, her need for reassurance, her fear of rejection, that she had suppressed. When Liam expressed a desire for deeper emotional sharing, Elara didn't just hear his words. She felt the echoes of her own internal judgment. She projected her own harsh inner critic onto him, believing that if she revealed her true self, he would see her through the same critical lens she applied to herself. This wasn't a conscious thought process. It was an automatic, deeply ingrained pattern of emotional response. Her internal narrative whispered, "If I show him this weakness, he will inevitably abandon me, just as I have abandoned these parts of myself." This phenomenon of ego projection is a subtle yet pervasive saboteur of intimacy. We project our unresolved issues, our unfulfilled desires, and our unaccepted shadow aspects onto our partners, expecting them to either validate or alleviate these internal conflicts. For Elara, her need for control, stemming from a childhood where she felt powerless, was projected onto her interactions with Liam. When he attempted to take the lead in emotional conversations, She perceived it as an encroachment on her carefully guarded autonomy, not as an act of loving initiative. This created a subtle but constant tension in their relationship, a dance of unmet needs and misinterpretations. A poignant example of this played out during a quiet dinner one evening. Liam, wanting to deepen their connection, shared a story from his past that highlighted a moment of personal failure and vulnerability. He recounted how, in his youth, a business venture had collapsed, leaving him feeling utterly lost and ashamed. He shared this with the hope that Elara would reciprocate, that it would open a space for her to share her own moments of perceived weakness. But Elara's response was not what he anticipated. Instead of empathy or a shared vulnerability, she immediately offered practical solutions, analyzing where his business plan went wrong and suggesting ways he could have mitigated the failure. Her intention was to be helpful, to show her competence, but her unconscious projection of her own fear of failure prevented her from meeting his emotional bid with reciprocal openness. She couldn't sit with his vulnerability because it mirrored her own unaddressed fear of not being enough. She projected her internal demand for perfection onto him, and thus couldn't allow herself to truly connect with his imperfection. Liam, sensing the emotional wall, felt a familiar pang of isolation. He hadn't sought advice. He had sought connection. He had shown her his shadow, hoping she would show him hers, but instead, she had offered a blueprint for ego fortification. This unconscious pattern of projection created a cycle of unmet emotional needs. Liam began to feel unheard, and Elara, despite her best intentions, felt increasingly misunderstood and lonely, trapped within the very mask she had constructed for protection. She yearned for genuine connection, yet her psychological defenses ensured it remained just out of reach. This intricate interplay of persona and projection highlights a fundamental challenge in relationships. We often fall in love with the projected ideal of another, or worse, project our own unacknowledged parts onto them, then wonder why the reality doesn't match the internal narrative. For Elara, her rigidly held persona of strength prevented her from seeing Liam's genuine desire for a deeply connected, emotionally honest partnership. She interpreted his attempts to penetrate her defenses as a threat, rather than an invitation to shed the weight of her lonely self-sufficiency. This is where the journey of individuation, Jung's lifelong process of integrating conscious and unconscious elements to become a whole, unique individual, becomes critical in the realm of love. Without acknowledging our own shadow and our projections, we remain trapped in a dance with phantoms of our own creation, unable to truly see or be seen by our partners. The archetype at play here is not simply the lover or the caregiver, but the lonely protector, a figure who, by shielding themselves from imagined threats, inadvertently isolates themselves from the very emotional nourishment they crave. The central theme is the critical importance of self-awareness in love, the understanding that what we perceive in others often tells us more about ourselves. When you find yourself continually irritated or disappointed by certain qualities in your partner, pause and ask, is this truly about them, or is it a reflection of something I am unwilling to confront within myself? The solution lies in the courageous act of self-reflection, of bringing the unconscious projections into the light of consciousness. Begin the work of shadow integration, acknowledging those parts of yourself you've disowned. When you can embrace your own perceived imperfections, you create the space to accept the imperfections of others, and true connection can begin to flourish. This is a journey of profound self-love that paradoxically unlocks the capacity for deeper, more authentic love with another. Our journey with Elara has revealed how the protective persona and the unconscious dance of projection can hinder authentic connection. Yet, the deepest transformation, the most profound healing in love, emerges not merely from awareness of these patterns, but from the courageous act of integrating the shadow and embarking on the path of individuation. It is here, in the willingness to confront what we have denied within ourselves, that the mask truly begins to dissolve, revealing the potential for a love that is both profound and liberating. The eminent psychologist Carl Rogers, a pioneer in humanistic psychology, articulated a truth essential to this final phase of healing. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. This isn't a call for complacency, but a radical invitation to embrace all aspects of our being, especially those we deem unlovable or unacceptable. For Elara, the mask she wore was not merely a superficial facade. It was a deeply ingrained self-rejection of her own vulnerability, her fears, and her perceived imperfections. Her childhood experiences taught her that to be loved, she had to be strong, self-sufficient, and perpetually composed. These were the unacceptable aspects of her inner child that she had exiled to her shadow. The true turning point for Elara began not with a dramatic confrontation with Liam, but with a quiet, internal crisis. After countless instances where she had deflected his attempts at emotional intimacy, a profound loneliness settled over her. She saw the quiet hurt in his eyes, the subtle withdrawal that followed her defenses. One evening, after another guarded conversation, she found herself staring at her reflection. The woman looking back was competent, poised, and utterly alone. A deep sigh, one she had held back for years, escaped her lips. It was a sigh of exhaustion, of carrying the immense weight of her own self-imposed perfection. In that moment of profound weariness, a tiny crack appeared in her armor. She began to ask herself, truly ask, what she was so desperately protecting. This was the beginning of her shadow work. It wasn't a sudden revelation, but a gradual, often painful process of turning inward. She started with small steps, journaling about moments where she felt vulnerable or inadequate, moments she had previously dismissed or rationalized away. She recalled instances from her childhood where her emotional expressions were met with disapproval, and she began to see the direct lineage between those early experiences and her current fear of emotional exposure. She remembered the sting of her mother's dismissive tone when she cried over a scraped knee, or her father's terse advice to toughen up when she expressed anxiety about school. These were the foundational bricks of her mask. One evening, while reflecting on a recent argument with Liam, she had an epiphany. He had expressed his frustration about her emotional distance, saying, "It feels like you're always just outside my reach." Her immediate, habitual response was to justify her behavior, to explain her stress at work. But then, a different voice, a quieter, more honest one, emerged from within. It acknowledged the truth of his words, the genuine pain in his voice. She realized that her carefully constructed arguments were not for him, but for herself, to avoid the discomfort of admitting her own fear. The courage to face this inner truth led her to a pivotal conversation with Liam. It wasn't eloquent or perfectly articulated, but it was raw and real. "Liam," she began, her voice trembling slightly, a rare occurrence. I think I've been afraid to let you see. All of me, the parts one don't like, the parts one think aren't strong enough." She spoke of her childhood, not as an excuse, but as an explanation for the origins of her fear. She confessed her deep-seated belief that vulnerability equaled weakness, and that weakness would inevitably lead to rejection. Liam listened, his expression shifting from guardedness to profound understanding. He didn't interrupt. He simply held her gaze, a silent testament to his presence. For the first time, Elara felt truly seen, not for the mask she presented, but for the complex, vulnerable woman beneath. This act of exposing her anima, her feminine, emotional, intuitive side that she had long suppressed, was terrifying, but also profoundly liberating. It was the first conscious step towards individuation, the process of becoming a unified, whole self. It wasn't about erasing the strong, capable woman she was, but about integrating her strength with her vulnerability, her intellect with her emotions. She started practicing small acts of vulnerability, sharing her true feelings even when uncomfortable, allowing herself to lean on Liam, to express her needs without apology. This wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, and the urge to retreat behind her mask was often overwhelming. But Liam's consistent patience, his unwavering acceptance, became the scaffolding upon which she rebuilt her self-trust. He didn't demand her vulnerability. He simply created a safe space for it to emerge. Elara's story culminates in a powerful realization. The mask, once a protector, had become a prison. Her journey reflects the wisdom of William James, who recognized the fluid, dynamic nature of the self. There is no single, fixed self, but a continuous process of becoming. True love, and indeed true self-worth, blossoms not from the flawless presentation of a perfected self, but from the radical acceptance of one's entire being, including the perceived imperfections. It's about understanding that your wounds are not weaknesses to be hidden, but pathways to deeper empathy and connection. The archetype Elara ultimately embodies is the integrated self, a woman who has bravely journeyed into her own depths, retrieved her exiled parts, and woven them into a richer, more authentic tapestry of being. The theme is the transformative power of vulnerability and the profound liberation that comes from releasing the burden of perfection. You, too, possess this capacity for profound transformation. If you recognize yourself in Elara's struggle, know this: the path to genuine intimacy begins with you. It starts with the courage to look at your own shadow, to understand the origins of your masks, and to accept all the fragmented pieces of yourself. Embrace the quiet wisdom of stillness, perhaps through meditation or moments of conscious reflection, allowing your inner landscape to reveal itself without judgment. Begin with small acts of authentic expression, particularly with those you trust. Share a fear, admit a struggle, allow yourself to be seen in a moment of imperfection. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully you. The pain you carry from past hurts can be transmuted into wisdom, guiding you towards relationships built on profound honesty and acceptance. You are already whole, and when you recognize this, your internal power will transform your relationships, attracting and sustaining a love that celebrates your authentic self, flaws and all. What part of your mask are you ready to bravely reveal today? Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and share this video with other friends to spread valuable insights in life. Thank you for listening. The END.